Welcome. This is David Boles. You're listening to the Human Meme Podcast. There's something unique and maybe even a little uncanny valley about what you're listening to right now because I'm not here. In fact, I'm not anywhere. What you're listening to is my voice, the David Boles voice, translated into a text-to-speech AI bot voice. And what I'm going to share with you today are ideas about human thought and meaning, and how that ideal has changed over the last century of human being. We'll check in with ChatGPT-4 and Claude AI and Bard AI to get their take on what it means to be human in an AI society. So let's begin, shall we? Here's the question we asked each AI bot. Explain the history of the evolution of thought and meaning over the last century. ChatGPT-4. The 20th century heralded significant shifts in thought and meaning across numerous domains, such as philosophy, science, art, and politics. This expansive transition can be understood through the following key movements and paradigms. Pre-World War I optimism, 1900s, 1910s. At the dawn of the century, thought was colored by positivism and scientific optimism. The works of Auguste Comte and Émile Durkheim emphasized a faith in reason and social science. Moreover, advances in physics with luminaries like Albert Einstein signaled a belief in a deterministic universe. Existentialism and modernism, 1920s, 1930s. The traumatic experiences of World War I prompted a deep questioning of previous optimistic ideologies. Writers like Ernest Hemingway and philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus ushered in existentialism, a focus on individual existence and the absurdity of life. Logical positivism and behaviorism, 1930s, 1940s. In contrast to existentialism, logical positivism in philosophy and behaviorism in psychology sought to make thought more empirical and systematic. Figures like A.J. Ayer and B.F. Skinner aimed for a more scientific understanding of language and behavior. Post-World War II, 1950s, 1960s. The devastation of World War II influenced a new wave of thought about ethics and responsibility. Hannah Arendt's work on the banality of evil and Simone de Beauvoir's feminist existentialism laid the groundwork for moral and political discussions. Additionally, the civil rights movement and decolonization globally added nuance to ideas of justice and freedom. Postmodernism and post-structuralism, 1970s, 1980s. These movements questioned the grand narratives and meta-narratives that often underpin systems of thought. Michel Foucault, Jacques Derrida, and Jean-François Lyotard critiqued the very foundations of meaning, history, and identity. End of the century. Digital revolution and cognitive science, 1990s, 2000s. The digital age radically altered conceptions of identity, community, and reality. Simultaneously, cognitive science incorporating philosophy, neuroscience, and computer science began redefining our understanding of the mind. Thinkers like Daniel Dennett and Douglas Hofstadter offered new paradigms to explore consciousness. 21st century. Posthumanism and ethical revival. Emerging trends such as artificial intelligence, big data, and biotechnology have initiated discussions around posthumanism. Meanwhile, in moral and political thought, there is a renewed focus on issues like climate justice, economic inequality, and human rights, championed by contemporary philosophers like Martha Nussbaum and Thomas Piketty. The history of thought in the last century has been marked by an increasing complexity, interdisciplinarity, and reflexivity, signaling not just the evolution of individual ideas, but also the frameworks within which they are understood. This chronological explication is a necessarily abridged overview, and does not capture the richness of the multiple discourses that have shaped the modern intellectual landscape. Nonetheless, it offers a roadmap for understanding the transformation of thought and meaning over the last century. Okay, so that's the ChatGPT-4 take on the evolution of human thought over the last 100 years. Now here's what Claude has to say on the subject. Here is a brief overview of the evolution of thought and meaning over the past century. The early 20th century was a time of great change and advancement in many fields. In philosophy and psychology, thinkers like Freud, Jung, James, Dewey, and Russell explored the inner workings of the human mind and challenged traditional notions of truth and meaning. Science and technology rapidly advanced, leading to groundbreaking discoveries that reshaped understandings of the physical world. Artistic movements like Surrealism, Dadaism, and Modernism reacted against traditional ideals and pushed the boundaries of creative expression. Literature and poetry became more experimental, as seen in the works of writers like Joyce, Eliot, Kafka, and Beckett. The world wars and other conflicts exposed the dark realities of humanity, raising questions about human nature and morality. Existentialism, championed by thinkers like Nietzsche, Sartre, and Camus, grappled with feelings of alienation and the search for meaning in an absurd world. The civil rights, feminist, and anti-war movements of the 1960s challenged conventional values and power structures. Postmodern and post-structuralist theories critiqued overarching narratives and absolute truths. Concepts of identity, language, and subjectivity were deconstructed. The digital age beginning in the 1980s significantly shaped thought and meaning. Technology enabled rapid spreading of ideas and new virtual realities. Fields like cognitive science aimed to understand the mechanics of the mind. Debates arose around ethics in an increasingly technological world. More recently, areas like critical theory, post-colonialism, and environmental philosophy have continued to question dominant ideologies and systems. Ongoing discoveries in science and technology continue to provide new perspectives on meaning and what it means to be human. In summary, the last century saw profound challenges to established worldviews and an explosion of new ideas and frameworks for making sense of an ever-changing reality with progress ongoing today. Okay, that was a rather brief reply from Claude. The paid version, I might mention. And now we turn to Bard AI for its take on how human thought has evolved over the last century. Bard AI. The evolution of thought and meaning over the last century has been shaped by a number of factors, including the rise of science and technology. Scientific discoveries and technological advances have challenged traditional ways of thinking and led to new understandings of the world. For example, the theory of evolution and the development of quantum mechanics have revolutionized our understanding of the natural universe. Globalization and the spread of ideas. The world has become increasingly interconnected, which has led to the spread of ideas and cultures across borders. This has exposed people to new ways of thinking and living, and has challenged traditional values and beliefs. Social and political upheavals. The 20th century was marked by a number of major social and political upheavals, such as the World Wars, the Cold War, and the Civil Rights Movement. These events have led to changes in the way people think about themselves, their societies, and their place in the world. Some of the key trends in the evolution of thought and meaning over the last century include a shift from religious to secular thought. In many parts of the world, there has been a decline in religious belief and a rise in secularism. This has led to a greater emphasis on reason and evidence and a more open-minded approach to new ideas. A growing awareness of diversity and inclusion. People are becoming more aware of and accepting of diversity in terms of race, gender, sexual orientation, and other factors. This has led to a more inclusive society and a broader range of perspectives on the world. A focus on individual rights and freedoms. There has been a growing emphasis on individual rights and freedoms, such as the right to free speech, the right to religious freedom, and the right to equal treatment under the law. This has led to a more just and equitable society. Here are some specific examples of the evolution of thought and meaning over the last century. In the early 20th century, Sigmund Freud's theory of psychoanalysis revolutionized our understanding of the human mind. Freud's ideas challenged the traditional view that the mind is rational and logical, and suggested that it is also driven by unconscious forces. In the 1950s and 1960s, the civil rights movement in the United States challenged traditional notions of race and racism. The movement led to a greater awareness of the injustices faced by African Americans and other minority groups, and helped to bring about important changes in the law and society. In the 1970s and 1980s, the feminist movement challenged traditional gender roles and stereotypes. The movement led to a greater awareness of sexism and the importance of gender equality. In the 1990s and 2000s, the rise of the internet and social media has led to a new era of globalization and communication. This has exposed people to new ideas and cultures from all over the world and has challenged traditional ways of thinking and living. The evolution of thought and meaning is an ongoing process, and it is difficult to predict what the future holds. However, it is clear that the last century has seen a number of significant changes in the way people think about themselves, their societies, and the world around them. Well, that was an impressive response from Bard. If I had to rank the responses by quality of the asking, I'd say ChatGPT-4 was best overall, followed by Bard, and in last place, Claude. That said, 5 years ago, none of this would have been possible to share, let alone a century ago. Plus, my voice, my AI bot voice you are hearing right now, is such an amazing gift of the preservation of tone and existence. And it proves that the immortality of life is within our grasp, or at least within the sound of our voices. Our everlasting AI voices that can be used to enhance the common good, or exploit those who are innocent and unaware. The choice is yours to make. Thank you for listening. I'm pretty much David Boles, you know what I mean. And please be a human. Meme.